Hi everyone, I'm Joe Brady and welcome to Baking Delicious Portraits. In this series, we're going to compare our studio to a kitchen for our portrait photo shoots. And just like when baking, there are some essential ingredients and tools you need to have to get consistent, efficient, and tasty results when creating portraits. Now, our substitution for flour and measuring cups will be our lights and our light meter. Now, when you work in a professional kitchen, the basics have been established while the nuances and flavor adjustments are more up to the individual chef. We're going to take that concept into the studio so that we'll have a consistent and proven base upon which we can add our own lighting flavors to suit our own tastes. Now, each of these sessions will be themed around a specific dessert that relates to the mood and style of the portrait we're after. In fact, today is going to be angel food cake. Yes, we'll get to eat it later. I hope this analogy can help you relate to creating different types of portraits without adding too many inches to your waist or requiring a lot more hours at the gym. Now, to answer one question before we start, can't you take great portraits without either lights or a meter? The answer, of course, is yes. Now, you may find some great available light, and with today's mirrorless cameras having full-time live view right through the viewfinder, you get to see your finished photo before you even snap the shutter. However, when crafting portraits, we can't rely on hoping we find great light. We need to craft it when and where we need it. So let's take a look at our main ingredients. Let's start with light. Understanding and shaping light is the key to all photography, and mastering light is a lifelong pursuit. Whether you're a landscape, portrait, commercial, sports, or street photographer, learning to see and adjust position and direction to make the most of light is what we all seek. Now, even available light is something to study and carefully observe so that you have a complete understanding of how it illuminates and shapes your subject. In the studio, we do the same thing with our studio lights. Now, for our portraits, it's important to know how to control and shape your lights. We're going to start out with basic studio strobes, but everything we explore will apply to speed lights or continuous lighting as well. When you learn your equipment, it becomes your ally. When you work with unfamiliar gear, it can get in the way of you creating successful results. We want to get to the place where our equipment works for us, not against us. Second is our light meter. Now, for some of you, this is a foreign, indoor, antiquated piece of gear. But for any experienced studio photographer, this is as basic and necessary a tool as measuring cups are to a baker. In fact, that analogy works perfectly. A light meter is your measuring cup for your lights. By being able to measure the amount of each light in your portrait set, you know that you're getting the perfect amount wherever it's needed. You wouldn't bake a cake without measuring cups. We're not going to whip up portraits without our light meter. To get our consistent base results, I'm using Sekonic light meters here in the studio. Now, I've got actually three here with me. I've got the Sekonic 308S, which is a good basic meter. I've got the 478DR, which is probably going to be my primary meter for most of these shoots. And I also have my 758, which is what I primarily use out in the field. For basic metering, all these units do a great job. The 478 does have a more advanced feature set that we're going to take advantage of when we start mixing flash and available light. Now, I'll make sure to give the basic 308 a good chance as well. The key point is that these tools are essential for studio photography and for any time that measuring light for consistent results is important. So let's get started and prepare our set for our first creation, a photographic version of angel food cake. Now, today I'm going to share two recipes with you for creating what's known as high-key portraits. Think white background, white clothing, light everything, just like the dessert. High-key lighting typically has very little contrast and no deep shadows. I also find it makes for great black and white portraits that are very airy, gentle, and soft. Now, just like when baking, there are a lot of recipes around and everyone has an opinion of what's best. I'm going to share my recipes and you can, of course, flavor them to your liking. For most studio portraits, you're generally going to want to start by getting your main light correct first. But for this type of lighting, we need to establish our background lights first. We're going to craft both headshots and full-length portraits, and these two options can require different lighting. So let's start with the more difficult of the two, the full-length high-key portrait. For a full-length high-key shot, we need sufficient light. It's important to light the entire background and floor as evenly as possible. We can and will make some adjustments in software later, but we want everything as perfect as possible in the camera. Now, obviously, we're going to need a white paper background to start with, and we're going to keep it simple. This is a 9-foot white paper background. It's using Savage Super White paper. To have a bit of control over the direction of the background lights, I'm going to use reflective umbrellas. This allows us to spread the light while keeping it from hitting the model directly. Now we're going to position the umbrella as far away from the flash head as possible. This creates the most gradual fall off and most even light. If you put the umbrella up close to the head, now this will create a hot spot and it will be a faster fall off. It's definitely an interesting thing to know, but not for our backgrounds. We need even light. That's what we're going for here. To get enough light for a full length shot, you're going to need probably 4 lights on your set. 2 for the background and 2 for on your subject. So what I'm using is 2 studio strobes to light the background in umbrellas, and I've got 2 lights, one for my main and one for my fill. Also, as a compromise, you could also use a speed light as your fill light. Remember, light is light. It's all about how you shape and control it. Now, since we're dealing with a full length shot, I might need to add a little bit of extra light, strangely enough, around the feet because they're going to have a tendency to cast shadows on the floor. Now, that might be okay, but depending on where the shadows are being cast, I also brought in a speed light on a small stand that will fire with my strobes just to fill in that floor a little bit. It's important that your background is lit evenly if you want it to appear a clean white. To know for sure, I need to measure the intensity of light on the background. Typically for me, this number is going to be anywhere from 1/3 of a stop to maybe 1 stop over of what my main or key light will be. This is going to affect the mood depending on the distance of your subject to that background. If you're after a very clean, full detailed shot with an evenly lit background, I like to start with a background a bit over the main light power. So if I'm going to use f8 on my camera, that means f9 up to f11 on the background reading. Too much light will cause the edges of your subject to disappear. Now this is a look, but I want all of my subject seen. Should I choose to have those edges fade away, I usually prefer to do that in software later. You can always lighten something, but if the detail is gone in the original, it's gone forever. Now, since my studio isn't that large, I'm going to shoot for 1/3 to 2/3 of a stop brighter on my background compared to my main. And this is where your light meter comes in. Remember, your camera can't do this. It can't measure individual lights. It can only measure the sum of the lights reflecting back into your camera. The light meter is different. It measures the light falling on something rather than reflecting off. Now, as you increase the power of the background lighting, you'll also start to see white light wrapping around the sides of your subject. How much of this is acceptable depends somewhat on the mood you're going for. If you want a very ethereal and airy look, this slightly overexposed edge might work for you, and we're going to use that as well. This is where it really pays to visualize what your final image is going to look like. I've asked my model to wear all white for this shoot. That means if I want to maintain detail on all the white fabrics, my exposure needs to be very close to perfect. A light meter is going to give you all the information you need every time. Trust the meter, put the numbers it gives you in your camera, and you're going to get perfect results. So let's go ahead and get our background lights all set up. Now, again, I'm using a Sekonic 478 meter here, and I've got a system that doesn't talk directly to this meter. You might have strobes that use various different triggering systems. So in order to do that, there's a mode on these flashes. Basically, it's a waiting mode. Now, the waiting mode is signified on the front of the meter with just a little lightning bolt without the little antenna, which means a transmitter. The lightning bolt means when I hit the measure button, it's going to look for 90 seconds for a flash. Now, I've got the wireless trigger for my light set here, so all I need to do is go into the back, hit the button to measure, and then when I've got it in position, just hit the test button on my trigger, like that, and it comes back and it gives me a reading. So let's go ahead and get the background lit and measured. All right, so again, the first thing I want to do is I want to measure my background. I do have my main and fill light on as well because they're going to be contributing. So even though they're further away, they might add a little bit of a contribution that I want to know about. So I've got the meter set for the waiting mode. I just hit the measure button and then I can position it where I want. And I want to measure this background top to bottom and even down near the floor. So I'll position it up here about head height, get my reading, and it's coming back with F14. I want to bring it a little bit lower than that, so I'm going to bring the power of this light down so I get about F11 or so. And I'm getting F11, that's good. Now that was up here, I also want to measure down low, so let's go ahead and get a measurement there. Now I've got F11 on top, F10 on the bottom. That's just a third of a stop difference. That's really going to be enough. That's not going to look any different because remember up front, I'm going to probably be shooting at around F8 on my main. So let's just check the other side, do the same thing. F11 there, good. Let's measure down here. And F10, so we've got exactly the same. We've got F11 a little over head height, F10 down around the knees. I wanted to get a measure in the middle as well, so I'm going to get myself out of the way, take a measurement right in the middle, and I'm getting F11, perfect. I also want to get a measurement down low. I want to see what's going on down around the feet. F11, perfect. So we're very even. F11 mostly, F10. So now we've got our background lights set. Now we can set up the lights for the subject. Again, as I mentioned, I'm going to use two lights, a main and a fill. Typically, when you're producing a high-key portrait, your lighting ratio is going to be very flat, 1:1, 1:2. Now, I'm going to use a main light almost directly overhead. That's going to create a very slight loop lighting pattern on my angel food cake's face. I'll use the second light to fill in shadows on the neck, under the chin, and on the body. Since this is going to be a full-length portrait, I'm going to use some long softboxes and an octa to create that look. Since my background light's measured at F11, I'm going to set my main and fill so that they measure F9-ish. I've got my octa up here, and I'll go ahead and take a measurement. This is going to be my main. So again, I've got it on weight mode, hit the button to take a measurement, and hit the test button, and I'm getting F10. Since parts of my background are F10 and parts are F11, I think I'm going to go for my main light going to F9. So I'm just going to bring down the power just a smidge. Okay, just two little clicks on the light. Let's go ahead and get that measurement again. Perfect, now I've got F9. By the way, when I'm measuring individual lights, I've got the little dome on the meter here. Dome out for most of my readings, but when I want to measure just one light, then I'll put the dome in. And what that does is it makes the meter measure directionally. Now I can also check my fill, which is off to my right. So let's go ahead and get a reading there. And I'm getting F9 there. Lovely, that's going to be a very flat light. It's really 1:1. Let's see what that looks like, and then we can adjust our contrast ratio by adjusting the power of the fill light, and we're going to leave the background alone because it is set. So now that all the lights are in place and measured, we can invite our angel food subject onto the set. I'm ready to go. I've got my metering, so let's get Brooke out on the set, and I'm going to meter the main light first, and we can start shooting. Brooke, come on out here. Okay, so we've got Brooke on the set. Hi, Brooke.
Hi.
Brooke and I have worked together before, so I kind of knew what to expect, and I thought maybe I was stretching it a little bit to have her for angel food cake, but...
Thank you.
No, she's really a very sweet girl. She's an actress and a singer in her own right, and she can go from sweet to evil in a snap of the fingers. So that's why I thought she'd be great to work with. And she's also got beautiful long blonde hair. We've got her in white. It's going to be really nice. So first thing I need to do is I need to measure the lights that are hitting her face. So I'm going to measure the octa first, which is my primary coming in from this side. And I'm just going to point it from her face towards the light. I've got the dome in. Same thing. Let's measure towards the fill light. And I'm getting F9 here. Exposure on the camera. Remember, we've got F10, F11 behind us. We don't care about that. We care about the light on her. Now, the first couple of shots I'm going to do, I'm going to use the meter's reading. I'm going to shoot at F9 and then let this go slightly light. However, when you're doing this kind of light, airy look, I find it looks really nice to just overexpose maybe a third of a stop. So if the meter is giving me back F9, in fact, let's do one reading with the bulb out on the meter back towards the camera position. I've got F9 here. I might have my camera set at F8. It's just going to open a third stop. It just adds a little bit more airiness to it, and it really creates a nice look. So you ready? Mm-hmm. Okay, so F9, let's do it. Oh yeah, look at that. Nice. Okay, now look here. Bring your hand down all the way. There we go, pretty. Chin up a little bit. Right, oh, beautiful, right there. It doesn't have to be a big smile, but it can be kind of like that. Yeah, you just, you know,
Yeah.
you're
Strolling.
relaxed. You're enjoying yourself.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah, that's good actually. Let's do it again. All right, so we got some beautiful full-length stuff. We had some fun with it. Had Brooke jumping around and all. Pretty much the entire background is pure white, and you're exposed perfectly. There's nothing blown out or anything. We can adjust from that if we want to make it a little more airy. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit more in camera. So I'm going to actually open up 1/3 to 2/3 of a stop from what my meter reading was. I've got Brooke, about 6 feet off the background. So because of that, I'm not getting any blowback around her. That is a look. I'm not really fond of it. When you have your subject too close to a lit background, that's the same light or maybe a stop above. What ends up happening is you'll start to see sides of the skin, sides of the hair start to disappear. I don't want to do that. It is a look, as I mentioned, but I want to have perfectly clean. I want to see everything in the image. That said, by opening up 1/3 to 2/3 of the stop, it will add a little bit more softness to the image in camera. One last thing, you might have noticed when we're doing the full length, because of the way the lights are set up, there was a slight bit of shadow under her feet. Not really an issue, but I'm going to get rid of it. To do that, I've got a simple speed light with a little diffuser on it sitting on a low stand. And to make it sync with the rest of my studio lights, I just have a simple white light trigger that will fire this light whenever it sees the studio lights fire. So I'll turn that on. I've got this on manual and 16th power because it's going to be fairly close. I know the shadow was caused by probably from this umbrella over here. So this is going to counteract that. Okay, so now where she's positioned right now, I'm getting F10. I'm going to open up 2/3 of a stop. I want to just air it up a little bit more, so I'm going to shoot the camera at F8. We've added a flash onto the floor to further diminish those shadows. There might be a hint of them because I don't want to blow out her feet and have her feet become the subject. I want her face to be the subject. So F8, flash on the floor to lighten those shadows, and should be good. Let's try it. There we go. There we go. I like it. That was good, that last one.
Oh my God.
Look right at me. Put a piece on the fork. Get it right up close. Yeah, don't actually open your mouth yet. You're waiting. Are you happy about it? So the cake was a success, huh?
Yeah, it really was.
All right. In fact, the cake was so much of a success that Brooke asked if there was any way that she can come back and be the model for the Devil's Food cake shoot that we're going to do. What we did on that one, again, we opened up 2/3 of the stop. Our reading on her face out here was F10. We shot at F8. That's 2/3 of a stop. It added a little bit of softness over the entire image and just started to dull down some of the details, and the results were spectacular. They looked gorgeous. So a couple more things. I'm just going to couple more shots while Brooke's enjoying her cake. I'm going to have to get a piece too. And then we're going to switch things up a little bit. We're going to try a little different recipe for doing this whole high key thing. I'm going to go in and I'm going to take a couple of shots closer. We're really going to be more this area. I'm going to turn off the fill light for a couple also. I just want to see what happens when we get a little bit more shadow. Don't know if I'm going to like it, but let's see what happens. And then we're going to switch things up to a new recipe. So let's give it a shot. All right, I just turned off the fill light, did a couple of shots. Now we've got a single direction light, the octabank coming in. If you look straight at the camera, Brooke, you can see there's a slight bit of shadow on her face. It's a look again. You see the results. Personally, I don't like it. I really like the more airy look. I like the completely flat 1-to-1 ratio look. So that said, there's a couple of shots with a single light, with the shadows. If you like it, fine. Not my recipe that I would prefer to follow. So I like all the lights. I like the 1-to-1 ratio. Now we're going to switch things up a little bit, and instead of using white paper, although I'm going to leave this up, instead of using white paper as a background, now I'm going to position a big softbox right behind Brooke, and that's going to be our background. A little bit different metering needs, but very easy to get pure white because it's actually a light shooting out towards the camera. So let's set that up and see how we make out. So we've polished off almost half of the cake. some diet we're all on. But I'm gonna show you another recipe. Now this, instead of using the white background, I simply have a big softbox behind Brooke. This is about, what is that? 3 by 4 foot, I guess. And I'm using this as my background. And I'm gonna treat it exactly the same way. I want the amount of light coming out of this towards her to be like we had the background. So I'm gonna go for f11 again. And in this case, I'm just gonna meter from the back of her head towards the softbox. So I get my reading, and I'm actually at f13. Take another half a step forward. All right, one more. And still getting f13. Let me turn it down a little bit. There we go. I've got f11 now on here, and I want to measure the lights that are coming to her face. And again, we're at f11. We want to be around 9. f9, perfect. So we got f9 here, f11 here, 2/3 of a stop difference, great. So let me just do a couple of test shots, and then we'll see how this new recipe works with the light box as our white background. Okay, lips together. Nice. Okay, that works really nice. I really like that look. I'm gonna rotate this around and do a couple vertical shots. I'm gonna open up the camera 2/3 of a stop to 7:1. Kind of has a slight effect of smoothing the skin, evening out the shadows even a little more, and making it even a little more airy. And it will also make it look really nice when we convert to black and white. You ready? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we'll do some horizontals. Again, that work better for video, and then we'll shoot some verticals just by rotating the softbox on the strobe. Okay, here we are with St. Brooke. Yeah, right.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go even more ethereal. We're gonna go really airy. And actually, this time I wanna cause some blowout intentionally. So I'm gonna overexpose probably by a stop and a half or so. I just wanna recheck the lights from behind her. I've got f13, that's fine. From up front, we've got f10, 2/3 of a stop, that's good. I want details to start to disappear, and what's gonna end up happening is her hair's gonna get very light, her skin's gonna get very light, but because she's got dark makeup around her eyes and her eyelashes, they're gonna stay. And it's gonna be kind of a cool effect. So let's try that. Let's try a couple at around 5.6 to 6.3 with this ratio we've got going now. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Does it make sense to you?
Yeah.
The whole baking thing?
Yeah.
So the light meter, really, it's your measuring cup. It's the thing that's going to give you all the information you need, so you don't have to guess. You don't have to fumble. You don't have to take hours getting things set up. There's no trial and error. Mm-hmm. You adjust to flavors, and that's what we were doing when I decided I wanted to override the exposures a little bit. And that's where you come in. That's where your experience comes in, and that's why you want to experiment to what looks good to you, and also how you're going to process the images. But what the meter does is it eliminates the guesswork. You get these numbers, you put it in your camera, and you've got a perfect starting point. You can override or adjust a little bit, but this will give you that place that you want to start from every time. And yeah, I enjoyed the cake thing as well.
Yeah.
So did Brooke.
Yeah, I really did.
And we look forward to doing some more of these with a lot of different desserts. And I think we're going to have people fighting over who's going to get to shoot what, depending on the dessert.
I called devil's food already.
All right, so we got devil's food for Brooke, and we have a lot more coming to you. So that's it for today. Thanks.